Hello and welcome back. Some of you might know that this year on the Maker Fair Hanover there will be Lucas Jenni from Jenni.Swiss with his maker truck, and this thing is just awesome. It's basically a workshop on wheels. It's a converted fire truck, I think, and you should check the link here or wherever I put it and check this thing out. However, I've spoken to John from Multi-Tool Products, and he's supporting the truck and the demonstration that are going to happen at the Maker Fair with one of his awesome multi-tool attachments. Alright, so it's just a matter now of finding a grinder to mount this thing to. Alright, let's have a look if we can find something. So as you can see here behind me, John wasn't just kind enough to send the attachment, he also sponsored one of his huge 900 watt, I think about just over horsepower bench grinders, and that's what we're going to use as a base for the meat eater. Alright, it's not a meat eater, it's a steel eater. Alright, a steel eater.
As cool as the grinder is, I wanted to pimp it with a custom paint job as well as some custom parts. For most of the paint job I'm going to use the spray paint that was sent to me by Edding a while ago, and I'm looking forward to trying it out. Before we can start painting, we have to protect the grinder from paint. Well, not the whole grinder, just the parts that you actually don't want to paint. So it's a very simple process. It just takes a bit of time, and you have to make sure that you really cover all parts that you don't want to get covered in paint. That would be the arbor, the actual grinder attachment, and I used masking tape and cling film, as you can see here. In order to protect the threads from paint, I just screwed in a couple of bolts. Just before I started painting, I had to scruff up the surface, and I used a Scotch-Brite pad, and that really helps the primer to stick to the surface. And I ended up doing 2 coats of white primer, and that makes the color pop much more and the paint sticks to the surface much better. I ended up doing 2 coats of red on the entire grinder. While the paint dries, I can start work on the custom platen. Why am I making a custom platen? Well, the thing is, on the multi-tool, the platen does not properly contact the belt, and that is by design because the manufacturer wants to avoid too much strain on the motor. For knife making, however, you really want a good contact between the belt and the platen to allow flat grinds. I'm not too sure what type of steel I'm working with, but I do think it is a mild steel because it was relatively easy to shape and work with. I added bevels on the top and the bottom so the belt can slide over the platen much easier with less friction. I went through the grids from 40 to 120 and then finished it up with a Scotch-Brite belt to give the platen a smooth satin finish. Since the grinder came from the UK, it still had a 3-pin UK plug on it, and I had to replace that with a 2-pin EU plug. And if you're not too sure about electronics, I suggest you let someone else do it. If not, it is actually pretty straightforward. Now it was time to mount the platen on the platen. Right, well, you know what I'm talking about. So I started by drilling a small pilot and followed that up with a 6mm hole because I intended to use M5 screws, so the hole would be large enough. I used that as a template to drill through and give me a starting point on the new custom platen. As I said before, the steel was relatively easy to work with, so I think it would have been a mild steel of some sort. I deburred and countersunk the holes to make sure that the bolt heads sit slightly beneath the surface to avoid any contact with the belt. I'm going to spare you the final installation because it was a lengthy and frustrating process for someone with large hands to fumble around in tight spaces. Alright, so let's fire this thing up. And no problem. As you see, the melt makes proper contact with the platen, and I tried the adjusting leather. As you can see here, it is possible to move the belt left and right, and that is important because sometimes you want contact right to the edge and sometimes you don't. Next up was the installation of the disc sender or disc grinder, and that is just a matter of screwing the base plate in place and then adding the abrasive disc, and that's it. As you can see, it runs very smoothly. Quick demonstration of how quickly a belt change can be done, belt off, belt on in less than 15 seconds. To make use of the second arbor, I asked John to send a pigtail, and that mounts right over the arbor and is screwed in place. Now with a polishing wheel, we have a small buffing station right on the grinder. Finally, we're up to the last step, and that was adding stencils to the grinder's paint job. I cut out by hand stencils for John's logo, which is Multi-Tool Products, and had to make some corrections, which was, well, tedious, but well, what can you do? And I also added another stencil for Lucas logo, Jenni.Swiss, as well as famous on-air sign, which you can also see on the Maker truck. I think I removed the stencils slightly too early because the paint was a bit too wet, but in the end it worked out very nicely. I added 2 coats of clear coat, and that really finished the project up. I'm really looking forward to take this thing to the Maker Faire and play with it and let others play with it, and I hope to make a video. Thanks again to John for providing the grinder and the consumables, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.